What is going on, people? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another live stream. What is going on, people? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another live stream. Today, I'm going to give you guys an update on this market. We are getting very close to another major dump that will potentially take the price of Bitcoin into the low $50,000 range. So, I'm going to talk about what that looks like. And I also want to take some time to talk about the short-term price outlook that you see in this market, because if you're not careful, if you're not zooming out and if you're not looking at the bigger picture, I think you could, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. I can tell you that right now. And I've already seen it. I've seen a bunch of, analysis. I've seen a bunch of, market outlook where the prediction is that Bitcoin is going back into the $80,000 range. So, I want to make sure that if you are someone who watches my streams, if you are a subscriber to my channel, I want to make sure that you don't get caught up in the hypes. Bitcoin is not bullish, not at all. Bitcoin is not bullish, not when you zoom out, because when you zoom out is when you see the actual truth of what this market looks like and where we are more likely to trade over the next couple months. And I also want to comment on February monthly close. We are about I think 8 days. How many days do we have this February? Is it 29 or 28? How many days? 28. So we about exactly 20, not 20. We about exactly 8 days from a monthly close. So I'm gonna share with you my thoughts on this upcoming monthly close, potential impact, potential confirmations, and what we could take from it. But once again, welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you guys are having an amazing. Today's Friday. Hope you guys are having an amazing Friday. I do want to apologize if my energy is down. I'm actually sick. I have a really, really bad headache. I'm having a runny nose. I'm starting to have some fever. So I don't really feel good. So I do want to apologize if I seem like, my energy, the vibes, if it all seems down, I do want to give you guys a heads up that I'm not feeling good. But just because I'm not feeling good, guys, doesn't mean that I can't stream, doesn't mean that we can't talk about this market. And I promise you guys, look, if you want to learn technical analysis, if you want to learn the basics, this is a stream that you are going to enjoy. So definitely stick around, guys. But if this is your first time right here, of course, if you can hit the subscribe button, I will really, really appreciate you. If you can hit the like button, once again, the algorithm, you know exactly how it works. So if you guys can hit the like button, if you can subscribe, I will really appreciate. Hopefully, I'm not coughing, and hopefully, because of my runny nose, you guys are still able to hear me clear. But if not, we'll try to increase the volume. And I'm probably going to be sneezing, so if I do make a mistake and I, I sneeze in the microphone, I do apologize, guys. I want to give you guys a heads up. Once again, I'm not feeling good. I have a really, really bad headache. So I'm not going to be screaming. I have a runny nose, but it is what it is. I took some medications today. So yo, let's talk about Bitcoin, and we'll get into the other stuff later in the live stream. As always, guys, if you have some stuff and you would like me to analyze it, put them in the chat, guys. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Look, we all get sick, right? I'll be fine. But I feel like it's getting worse and worse. It started earlier this week, and then it has been picking up, and I feel like it's getting worse and worse. But I did take some Advil, so hopefully I'm better sometimes next week. But once again, I do want to apologize if my energy is down, if the volume is not is not as high as it normally is. But let's talk about this market. All right, chat. Always, when it comes to Bitcoin, I will always remind you. At least I want to remind you guys. I do want to remind you that we are in a full-blown bear market. There is nothing bullish about Bitcoin going into the remainder of 2026. The reason there's nothing bullish about Bitcoin in 2026, it is simply because the higher time frame is down. If you look at the monthly, we've lost a major monthly support of $74,000. We have a monthly that is pulling back, and not only pulling back, we have finally broken the bullish uptrend or the bullish structure for the very first time since $15,000. So just think about that for a second, chat. For the very first time since $15,000, which was in November of 2022, Bitcoin has broken this beautiful uptrend. So, when you think about what 2026 is more likely to look like, if we have a broken trend for the very first time since 2022, it is more likely we spend the remainder of 2026 in a downtrend. So if anyone out there, tries to tell you that this is a bullish market long term, and long term I mean 2026, I'm not talking about 5-10 years from now. If anyone out there, tries to tell you that this is a bullish market, what I want you to do is I want you to show them, this monthly time frame. At least if the conversation is around technical analysis. When you go to the weekly, what do we have? We have a Bitcoin that is in a very clear downtrend. And how do we identify a downtrend? Well, a downtrend is going to have a couple of things, and the most obvious ones is lower highs and lower lows. All right, this is a lower high right here, $97,000. This is a lower low, $80,000. And this right here, guys, all right, every single one of these lows is a weekly lower low. So once again, until this downtrend is over on the weekly, the remainder of 2026 is most likely to be a bearish market. So since we got that out of the way, since we agree that this is a bearish market, let's talk about something that I don't want any of you guys to get caught up in. When you go down to the lower time frame, I'm going to go down to the 1 hour. You can clearly see, guys, that we have a Bitcoin that is somewhat bullish, right? We have a Bitcoin that is somewhat bullish on the 1 hour. If you go down to the 15 minutes, we have a Bitcoin that is somewhat bullish on the 15 minutes. But I want to try to explain to you guys exactly what is going on. All right. A couple weeks ago, maybe not a couple weeks ago, but in many of my streams, one thing that I always try to push forward is a focus on, the trend of the market in terms of higher highs, higher lows, support resistance, lower lows, lower highs. And I'm always try to talk about the importance of different time frames and looking at higher time frames and lower time frames and the difference between the two time frames. A couple weeks ago, I talked about when you have a bullish monthly, you want to put more value on this, or a bearish monthly. You want to put more value on this over the weekly. So monthly over the weekly, weekly over monthly. Guys, this is right here. I'm teaching you guys technical analysis right here. If you don't already know, weekly over daily. You want to go daily over hourly. So we can do the 4 hour right here. And you want to do higher hourly time frames over lower hourly time frames. So we can do 4 hour right here, 4 hour. All right, 4 hour over 1 hour. And we can keep going on, all right? So you can do 1 hour over 30 minutes, all right? And of course, guys, you kind of get where I'm going with this. You can go 30 minutes over 15 minutes, 15 minutes over 10 minutes, 10 minutes over 5 minutes. You know exactly where I'm going with this. So basically, guys, when you have a market that is bullish on the monthly or bearish on the monthly, it doesn't matter what the weekly is doing. You always want to keep your focus on the monthly. If you do something on the weekly, make sure this is something that you are looking at in the short term. And make sure whatever you do, if it's the opposite of what the monthly looks like, make sure this is a short term, this is a short term stuff. All right. So I'll give you guys an example. Let's say the monthly is bearish, but the weekly looks bullish. If you're long in the market on the weekly, make sure you are doing this in the short term. Make sure this is not a position that you're planning on holding on for months, because as long as the monthly is bearish, the market will continue to trend down. So now that we got that out of the way, and you guys will see where I'm going with this. When you have a market that is bullish on or bearish on the monthly, let's talk about bearish because we have a market that's bearish. So let's say the monthly is trending like this. All right, you have a monthly that's moving like this. All right, during this move right here, guys, during this pullback right here. All right, sometimes the weekly, all right, during this pullback to the upside, the weekly is going to look like this. The weekly is going to instead look bullish. The weekly is going to give you higher highs and higher lows. All right, remember, this is the monthly. This is the weekly. This is the weekly right here. All right. Oh my gosh. This is the weekly right here. Let me kind of fix this, and I want to make sure we have different colors. So the monthly is down in a downtrend. The weekly might give you something that looks like this. All right. I want to make sure these are two different colors. So let me give this red, and let me give this one red as well. Remember, red is price action. White is the time frame. All right. When the weekly is doing this, guys, sometimes the daily. All right. Let me give you guys a daily. I want to change this to a white color. The daily could potentially look like this. The daily could do this. All right. And the daily is going to do this. This is a downtrend during. All right. Let me show you. Oh my gosh. The daily is going to give you a downtrend during this pullback right here on the weekly. So during these pullbacks right here, guys, the daily is going to look like this. All right. So this is how, different time frames are going to look like. All right. Depending on what's taking place on the higher time frame. And of course, if the daily is, if the daily looks like this, guys, maybe I should have made this a little bit more bigger. If the daily looks like this, where price is giving you lower lows and higher lows, all right, during every single one of these rallies right here, the 4 hour is going to look like this. The 4 hour is going to give you an uptrend, all right? Let me change that to white. So this is the 4 hour right here. I know this is supposed to be red. Oh my gosh. This right here is red because this is price action. And then right now we are looking for, this is a 4 hour. 4 hour, that's supposed to be white. All right, I do apologize, people. This is white right here. You guys, you get the picture, right? You get exactly what I am trying to explain to you right here. So during a downtrend on a higher time frame, when you go down to the lower time, you could potentially get an uptrend. So I'm explaining this to you because this is exactly what we are witnessing, with the current Bitcoin short-term bullish price action. If you go back to the monthly, guys, all right? If you go back to the monthly, you can clearly see we have a Bitcoin that is in a clear downtrend, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the month of, this is the month of February, right? Our current candle is the month of February. So I want to highlight this. So if you go down to the weekly, all right, on the weekly, we are still within a weekly pullback, right? In the month of February. When you go to the daily, all right, what is the daily doing? Is the daily in a downtrend right now? Like if you look right here, guys, no, the daily is going sideways. When you go to the 4 hour time frame, I want you guys to take a look at the 4 hour. All right, on the 4 hour, what do we have? All right, recently we had this move right here. Remember, this is within the month of February. So that same candle that is down and red, that same monthly that is in a clear downtrend, when you go to the 4 hour, you have a complete different outlook. All right. On the 4 hour, you have a Bitcoin that is trying to establish a bullish structure. All right. So remember, the month of February is bearish. But within the month of February, you have a Bitcoin on the lower time that is trying to establish some bullish structures. When you go to the 15 minutes, guys, all right, the 15 minutes is actually bullish. All right, so if you go down, if you look right here, all right, this is a move. On the 15 minutes, this is a move right here that establish, a bullish uptrend. So price, went up from 60,000. We broke above a prior lower high, $64,800. We ended up with a higher high, and then we had a pullback, and we put in a 15 minutes higher low. And then, of course, we had this move right here. We broke above the previous high again, and this gave us, all right, a well-established uptrend. And the result of that, you get a Bitcoin that goes all the way back to retesting $71,000. So if you look at the performance of Bitcoin on the 15 minutes, we have actually been very bullish. All right, but remember, we are bullish inside of a bearish market. All right, we are bullish in the short term inside of a bearish market. We need to keep our eyes on the price. The price is not the short-term stuff. The price is the bigger time frame. So what is the bigger time frame, guys? The bigger time frame is bearish, because I promise you, it doesn't matter what we do on the lower time, as long as when you go to the monthly, as long as this is what the market looks like, all right, you are going to see a Bitcoin that continues this downtrend. As long as the monthly looks like this, you are going to see a continuation of this downtrend. You are going to see a continuation of this bear market, because 15 minutes doesn't change the trend of a monthly time frame. All right, so I want to make sure that you guys are understanding. All right, I want to make sure you are understanding what we are witnessing right here. And when somebody looks at this market and they come to you and they say, hey, this is actually an amazing buy opportunity, and Bitcoin is going back to $100,000, what I want you to ask is, what time frame are you looking at? All right. What time frame are you looking at? Because the 15 minutes being bullish doesn't send the price of Bitcoin to $100,000. The only way you go to $100,000, the monthly needs to be bullish, guys. All right. So once again, I want to make sure that you guys are on the same page with me, and I want to make sure you are following. All right. When you look at different time frames, you are going to get different data. When your bigger time frames are pulling back, sometimes the lower time frame is in an uptrend. All right? Sometimes the lower time frame is in an uptrend. So when you have a pullback on the monthly, the weekly is going to be in a well-established downtrend, and you are going to see lower highs and lower lows on the weekly. So if you look at this monthly right here, guys, all right, this is a straight line from $126,000 to $60,000. So right here on the monthly, we don't have lower highs and lower lows. It's only when you go to the weekly, you have lower highs and lower lows. So when the monthly is pulling back, the weekly is going to have well-established structures. So you are going to see lower highs, lower lows. When the weekly is pulling back, the daily is going to have a well-established structure. So I'll give you guys an example. During this pullback right here, remember, this was just a pullback, all right, from $126,000 to $80,000. All right, all we had was a lower low. We didn't have a lower high, but when you go to the daily, guys, you are going to see multiple lower highs and lower lows. Look, on the daily, we have multiple lower highs and lower lows on the daily, while the weekly was pulling back. Remember, I don't know how many of you guys remember. If you were to go back, all right, if you were to go back and you listen to me or any other influencer, I bet you when BTC had this move right here, I bet you we were very bullish on Bitcoin, and we were calling for 130 or 140. Look, I was calling for $148,000, chat, when this was happening. Okay? And the reason was because on the weekly, we were still good. But the moment we lost, looking back right now, the moment we lost $107,000, that was a red flag. But I waited for $98,000 to be lost. I became bearish on BTC the moment we lost $98,000, because I was looking at $107,000 and I was just thinking, we are still above key moving averages. BTC is still putting in higher highs, higher lows. 107,000. It looks like this is way, way too soon. But I was waiting for $98,000 to be lost. And for me, once we lost $98,000, at that moment, we also lost the 50 weekly moving average. I became full-time bearish on BTC in the cryptocurrency market. But anyways, what I'm trying to educate you guys on is that when this weekly pullback was happening, remember, this was just a straight line. It was just a normal, healthy pullback. All right? No lower highs. We got our first lower high right here when we went from $80,000 to $97,000. But within this normal pullback, if you go back to the daily was already in a well-established downtrend. On the daily, we have multiple lower highs and lower lows. So what am I trying to teach you guys right now? What I'm trying to teach you is that you always want to focus on, the bigger time frame. In this instance, we're looking at Bitcoin. You want to focus on the monthly, and you also want to focus on the weekly. And the reason you want to focus on these two time frames is because it doesn't matter what takes place on the lower time. It doesn't matter what the 15 minutes is currently doing. We are not going to reverse this monthly right here. All right. And as you can see, the same example I just used, when the weekly was pulling back and BTC on the daily gave us multiple relief rallies. None of these relief rallies, guys, all right, established a long-term uptrend. And the reason was because the higher time was already bearish. The higher time was in a pullback. So until this higher time pullback is over, all right, for you to be bullish on Bitcoin is really a waste of your time. And if you are dollar cost averaging if you are dollar cost averaging, if you are building a position, then you just need to understand that this is not something that is going to be over anytime soon. What I want you guys to get out of this analysis is that different time frames mean different things, and you always want to value your higher time frames over your lower time frame. And when you have a weekly or a monthly that's pulling back, so if the monthly is pulling back, your weekly could potentially be, now this one is less likely where the monthly is pulling back and the weekly is in an uptrend. But when your monthly is pulling back, you can definitely have a daily that's in an uptrend. You can definitely have 15 minutes, 1 hour, even 4 hours that are in an uptrend. But it doesn't matter, what's taking place on those time frames. The market is, or the overall direction of the market is with the bigger time frames. All right, the higher time frame is what's important. So this is why I'm still bearish on this market. It's not because I don't want to be bullish. It is simply because what actually matters, what could actually send the price of this asset back to $100,000, potentially $200,000, $1 million. The setup is just not there yet. Now you give it 12 months from now, you give it 2 years from now, we could potentially be in a well-established uptrend. And until then, who am I to try to drag the price, back to those targets? Who am I to send Bitcoin back to $100,000? I don't have $2 trillion to put in this market. So chat, hopefully this is making sense. I want to make sure this is a place where, honest conversation is taking place. I want to make sure that we are focused here, and there's no distraction, and we are not trying to hope. I think when I think about what's taking place in this market, I think there's a lot of hopium. Just people just want the price to go up. People are just throwing, all kinds of ideas. This is what the market is going to do. This is what. Chat, stay away from it. Focus on the structure of this market. So, let's talk about other stuff, and we can get back to BTC, of course. I do have time today. It's just that I'm not feeling good, but it's okay, guys. It's definitely okay. All right, let me see. Let me talk about, actually, speaking of Bitcoin, before I finish with Bitcoin, I do want to talk about, the next 8 days. So we have a very important date coming up. Extremely important, guys. We're about to close the month of February. If the Bulls have any more fight in them, if they have any, exactly what I was going to say, but if they have any balls to save this market, they need to send the price of Bitcoin back above $74,000 before the end of February. So if you think, the bears are wrong, If you think we're going back to $100,000, the only way you save BTC is got to get above $74,000. Because once you get above $74,000, you have recaptured the monthly uptrend. And this crash right here becomes nothing more than a pullback on the monthly. So if we can stay above 74, there's a very good chance, and I'm not saying that will 100% mean that we're going back to all-time highs, but there's a very good chance, we can build or we can put together a platform that sends the price of Bitcoin back to $126,000. So I guess the question I have for you guys is this. Do you think in the next 8 days, the bulls are going to be able to close the price of Bitcoin above $74,600? Personally, I don't think so. All right, I absolutely don't think so. I think we're gonna close well below. I don't even think just 74. I think we close below $70,000. If I'm being honest with you guys, I think we closed the month of February somewhere around here, somewhere around 66, somewhere around 67. It's 8 more days, guys. You basically talking about today's Friday, right? Talking about is it next Sunday? When is the 28th? Is it next month? Not this upcoming Monday, but the following Monday. No, it's a Sunday. No, it's a Saturday. So we're talking about the upcoming Saturday, not this one, not tomorrow, but the upcoming Saturday. I don't think so. All right, I don't think the bulls. I just don't see enough buyers. When you look at the momentum indicators, which we talked about, guys. And I mean, the bears, man, are 100% in charge of this market. Like, Chad, you don't have to like it. You just got to see it as it is. Acknowledge it and play the game. Just don't hate the players. Hate the game, I guess. You look at RSI. RSI is in the trenches right now. This is not a place where you want to be bullish on BTC. This is a place where you acknowledge that those that are selling, those that are shorting are in full control of this market. All right, you stay grounded, you stay patient, and you wait for the next opportunities. All right, so this is not looking good. And then when you go to the weekly, once again, looking at weekly right here, I just don't see how all of the sudden we get back above 74,000. It doesn't look like. You go to the daily. This is a daily consolidation right now. Definitely need more data, but it looks like we are putting in some lows. So this looks like we can now have, a beautiful trend line that looks like this. And then another one right here that looks like this. I know people are trying to build a case that this is a bullish consolidation. Chat, I don't think so, man. I don't think there's anything bullish about this. I think we dump, very soon. Give it a couple of weeks. I think we dump. But if I'm looking at this right here, I think it makes sense we go back to $69,500. It makes sense we go back like this. And then we might get rejected right here. And then we get another pullback. I don't see, if we get a bounce, I don't see another pullback that bounces. I think if we were to get a bounce, if we were to get rejected right here, and then we get a bounce right here, I think the next time we come down, we're going to take out the lows. And right now, just looking at this, I think once you take out these lows right here, guys, I think we're going down in the 50s. I don't think 60,000 is going to hold price. Like, I really don't think this is going to hold us up. So, yeah, let's see how this all plays out. If I was to make a guess, how long does it take us until, we retest the resistance? Kind of just looking if I'm looking at this right here, if I'm looking at from here until the top, this is only 2 days, 14, 2 days. So that is 2 days. So 2 days, that will mean if this is the low, So that could mean probably by tomorrow, basically, we're already a day into this, and then we'll see how long this lasts. Now, if we break above the resistance, just so you guys know, even if we break above it, I'm not bullish. I'm still looking at 70,000 could potentially be a resistance. 70,000 right here, guys. If we get above 70,000, I'm still looking at $72,000. Like, these are places where we could easily get rejected. But the next couple of days are very, very important, or maybe should I say crucial. So yeah, looking at this, there's nothing to be bullish about, and we do have this monthly close coming up. So over the next couple, over these next 8 days, let's see what we get from Bitcoin. I'm not I'm not really excited, I guess, and I'm just looking at this, and it's all about being patient right now. It's all about not try to do anything stupid. All about staying on the sideline. Only way to participate in this market is two ways to participate. Either you shorted the market or stay on the sideline. Remember, staying on the sideline is also a participation. I know some of you guys, you think you have to be in the market, like you have to buy something, but staying on the sideline, not having a position, is also having a position. And if you don't understand what that means, the market is going to have to school you on that. So anyways, once again, I appreciate you guys. Hopefully this is helpful. And, let's continue on. Let's go into this other stuff. People are focused too much on the macro influences rather than the market structure. 100%. 100%. You are absolutely right. Look, the way I look at this market, at least nowadays, the way I look at this market is this. You have to pick your poison. You have to pick your poison. And what I mean by that is either you do you focus on fundamentals, you exclude technicals, or you focus on technicals and you exclude, or you basically try to avoid the fundamentals of the stuff, or you focus on these other stuff. I just think you have to pick one lane and you have to stay with it. Technical analysis to me tells the entire story. Like I don't need to be out here speculating on if the Feds are going to cut interest rates. I don't need to be out here and talk about fundamentals and different a million reasons why the fundamentals of Bitcoin is so strong, so incredible, and why $67,000 is a bargain. And the drill, guys. With TA, I'm just looking at pure price action, and I'm looking at the structure of the market. I don't care if the fundamentals are solid. I don't care if the Feds are cutting interest rates. I know exactly what I'm looking at. Right? I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know exactly where I'm getting my data from. My data is every single price action. The structure of the market. That is my data. And I'm going to make a decision based on what is in front of me. I'm not going to make a decision based on if the president of the U.S. is going to do something. How long have we waited for this crypto bill to pass? Like, how long have people used that as a very strong thesis why this is going to be, the reason Bitcoin and the entire cryptocurrency market go to these ridiculous, price targets. In 2025, it was about, M2 money supply. That came, nobody talks about that anymore. 2026, something else. In 2024, there was something else. In 2027, there's going to be something else. The only thing that never changes is technical analysis, because you are always looking at the market from a TA perspective. So it's crazy, guys. It's crazy. But anyways, let's jump into altcoins because as much as we want to talk about, and speaking of altcoins, child, let me talk about Iran. I wanted to talk about this one so bad. So, look, over the last, I'm gonna get into altcoins. Let me just kind of get over Iran. Over the last couple of weeks, yeah, probably weeks, I have said to you guys that I think Iran's bull market is over, and I think the reason I think it is over, first of all, is because when you go to the daily, or even when you go to the monthly, guys, we saw a new all-time high in about October of 2025, and then we had this pullback right here, and then price went back up, broke above the new all-time high, and then we got this massive pullback. And then recently, we had this rally from $33 up to $63. And to me, the moment we got this pullback, to me, I read this as a weekly lower high. So I'm looking at this as a weekly lower high, and it's a weekly one. All right. And also, when you go back to the daily, I actually read this as a double top. All right. This is the way I'm reading this. So when we go to the weekly, we are now looking at an Iran that is trying to establish a downtrend, meaning for the very first time, guys, we could potentially trend like this on the weekly, where we put in these lower highs and these lower lows. So far, we have a low, which is a higher low actually, which is $33. And what we don't have is a lower low. So I think we're about to put in a weekly lower low sometimes in the near future. But you got to give it a couple of weeks, of course, because we're dealing with a bigger time frame. So look, sometimes Iran is up a couple cents, sometimes a couple dollars, sometimes $2, $3. But what I've said to myself, at least based on the research I've done, is that the bare minimum, I'm going to get nervous if price breaks about $47. Once we break about 47, I could get nervous. And the reason I could get nervous is because when you look at this pullback from 63, guys, this is a lower high right here on the daily. This is a lower high. If we can break above 47, that could be a trend broker. So that could be an invalidation of the downtrend, and we could start something that looks like this. All right, this is the way I'm looking at it. The bare minimum is you get above 47, that might get me nervous. But at the same time, I'm zooming out and I'm going to the weekly, and I'm saying to myself, you need to break above 63. Is it 63? Yeah, I think it's 63. You need to get above. The moment you get above 63, that might get me really, really nervous, and that invalidates my bearish thesis, because instead of this being a lower high, this could actually be just, nothing but a pullback, and the next impulse move, gives us a higher high, and that means, price is more likely. Not only do we go back and break above $76, we could potentially be looking at this, $100 to $100 target that many of these bulls are calling for. So I'm looking at all of this, and I'm being really, really patient. And what's going to confirm, more of my bearish thesis is once we break $33. All right. So I'm spending a lot of time on the lower time. Give you guys an example. I'm spending a lot of time on the 4 hour. I do love the fact that we have lost the 200 daily, not daily, the 200 moving average on the 4 hour time frame. When I go to the 1 hour, I do like the fact that we have lost the 200 moving average in the 1 hour. And I do like the fact that we have lower lows and lower highs. And right now, I'm looking at this consolidation right here, and I'm like, okay, consolidating below the 200 EMA, perfectly fine with me. As long as you're still below this 47, the confidence in this, pullback is very, very high. And also, I'm looking at, this pattern right here. All right, I'm looking at this pattern right here, guys. Could this be a bear flag? Especially if you go to like the, the 4 hour. All right, or could this be, once again, I do think it is, some sort of a bearish pattern. I'm just waiting for a breakdown. I think once we do get a breakdown, especially once you go below $39, I think, next target most likely becomes 33. I don't think we're going to stop around 36. 36 is, it is a support, but I don't think is, strong enough to hold the price up. So I see it, like once we lose 39, I see a drop down to around $33. And I really, really, I'm really interested in how 33 is going to act, once we do get there. So this is more of a waiting game. All right. Before I get to altcoins, briefly, I also want to give you guys an update on Wolf. Chad, remember I told you last week, when Wolf failed to close the week above $17, I told you guys I thought a bull market was over, and we were looking at a pullback to 11. I think we are, on our way down to $11. And of course, guys, if we lose 11, you're looking at a wolf that could potentially dump all the way down to around $4. So, and it's not really a surprise if you think about it. BTC is in a bear market. The Bitcoin proxies are in a bear market. Like, who are these altcoins? Not altcoins. Who are these miners to continue pumping? Chat, think about that, right? Like, these guys, they make their profits from a bullish Bitcoin. How the hell are they doing so well when BTC is in a full-blown bear market? So I think it's over, for a bunch of these miners. And, the more time that passes by, the more evidence, because we get more data. And when you look at the charts, man, I mean, if you would have jumped into a short position exactly when I gave you guys a trade, look, this is a position that's currently up, up a couple percentage. And I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. I think over the next couple of weeks, you're looking at a continuation of this downtrend right here. If you do want to target, $4, I think you want to wait until we lose the 200 daily moving average. So somewhere below $10, you may start looking at 4. As of right now, it's a waiting game. Let me talk about altcoins. The macros really aren't looking good either. Absolutely. SPY and QQQ just one crash down, looks bearish. The SPY, you had a bearish. We talked about the bearish divergency when you look at the daily. So SPY right here, it's we're gonna have to be patient, okay? If this is not bearish, the invalidation is once we break above $697, that will be the invalidation. So as of right now, you're looking at these lows right here. As long as price, stays above these lows, then I do think we continue higher. As long as we stay below these lows right here, these highs right here, I do think you're looking at, potentially breaking these lows and coming down to retest some of these targets. But let me talk about altcoins, guys. But once again, though, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you smash the like. And if you guys, if you have some altcoins that you like me to talk about, put them in the chat. And I guess I gotta have to ask you guys a question though. How many of you are buying or not, or just staying on the sideline? Let me actually run a poll right here. Are you buying any of this dip? I guess that could be BTC altcoins. Let me give you some options. BTC only, and then I don't know if that makes any sense, but let's put a poll out there, guys. Let me see how many of you guys are accumulating stuff. All right, let's talk about altcoins. So, almighty altcoins. I mean, this one is just what a disaster market. Solana, $85. Once again, don't touch it. It's not bullish. It's in a long-term downtrend. This is going to take some time. Please, guys, don't let these influencers, don't allow any of these influencers to trick you into buying Solana at 85. And let me remind you, if you want to be bullish on Solana, and if you think this was a normal pullback, you have no more than 8 days to save to save Solana basically from a continuation of this monthly downtrend. Solana needs to hurry up within these next 8 days and get above $95. I don't think it's going to do it. I do not think there is enough buyers to push the price of Solana back to 95. You look at the momentum indicator, guys. I mean, all you have is just weakness, and I'm talking about strength in weakness. If that makes any sense. You look at the RSI. Trust me, guys, you do not want to be bullish on Solana when the RSI on the monthly has just recently gone below the 50 line. All right, you want to stay on the sideline. Wait until the consolidation is over. There's going to be a consolidation. I don't think you get a V-shaped recovery in this RSI. We are going to go sideways. It could potentially take 6 to 12 months. Do you want to be a bag holder? Do you want to lock up your capital for 6 to 12 months? I don't think so. So stay on the sideline. Don't do anything. Why are you in a rush? Like, what's the rush for? So the structure is down on the monthly. And remember, when we talk about monthly, we are talking about a very, very long time. You go to the weekly, the structure is bearish. Lower highs, lower lows. Do we have any sign? Is there any reason? Is there anything that can make us be bullish on Solana from a long-term perspective? I don't see one. I'm looking for bullish divergences on the monthly. I don't see any bullish divergency. I'm looking for bullish divergency on the RSI. I don't see any bullish divergency. I'm looking for a potential trend, trend breaker or trend reversal. I don't see any of that. All I see is a straight line since this retest of $150. All I see is a straight line down. You go from 150 down to 70, all right? And I see a continuation of this right here. All right, I see $50. It's a bare minimum. I see 50. And I don't think 50 is going to be your bottom, because once you get to 50, you are going to have to go sideways. You're going to have to do some stuff. So 85, this is not a bargain. This is an expensive Solana. Extremely expensive. Right? When you go to the lower time, remember, we just talked about that inside of this pullback on the monthly, inside of this downtrend on the weekly, you are going to have some bullish structures on the lower time. So here on the 1 hour, we have bullish structures. Look at this right here, guys. But is the 1 hour the one that is going to reverse the long-term trend? Of course not. Of course not. This is going to be over pretty soon. All right. Could we push all the way up to, back to 90? Probably 95, probably. Do I see us getting above 95? Less likely. All right, and I'm going to say I don't think so. And then we're going to get a pullback, at some point in the near future. So if I'm looking at Solana right now, I now have a well-established, trend lines. So if I take this lower here, put it right here, guys. What does this look like to you? This looks like a bear flag. Remember, you got the drop right here. Tell me this doesn't look like what BTC just did from that $80,000 to $96,000. So could we see a move, back to like 92, 93, somewhere around here? Probably. All right. I think if we do roll over, I think if you lose around $98 right now, most likely this is not going to hold. I think this low right here may not, and this right here may not be able to hold. Especially if you look at this right here, guys. A drop right here gives you a bear target of 66, which is below 67. And of course, we're looking at lower targets. So to me, this looks exactly like this BTC move. If you go back to Bitcoin, you go to the 4 hour. Tell me what you have is not this. There we go. There we go. The moment we lost the lows, this didn't hold. This didn't hold. It was a straight line to 60,000. So if I go back to Solana, and you look at the 1 hour, right, there's nothing to like about this. There is nothing to like about this. So, the best thing for you to do is stay on the sideline. Guys, don't be gassed, man, when you see these little 3% move, 5% moves. Remember, we're looking for a sustainable trend. We are looking for something that is sustainable, where it holds for multiple weeks and multiple months. That's what we are trying to identify. And then you look at Ethereum. You guys know how I feel about Ethereum. I mean, this is not good. Go back to the monthly. All right, right here. Look at Ethereum right here, guys. And I know people are trying to make a case that this is very similar to this pullback, which I honestly don't think so. You look at the momentum indicator. I mean, we are very bearish. You look at RSI. We are very bearish. You look at just pure price action. We are very bearish. The fact that we broke above all-time high, well, not all-time highs, broke above these highs right here, only to end up dumping. I mean, this is very, very frustrating, guys. Ethereum basically just went sideways for about 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. We basically just went sideways. So if I'm looking at Ethereum, is there a reason to be bullish on ETH? Like, if you think what's coming up is this right here, then you must guess, we must guess something that looks like this. I want you guys to take a look at this right here. This is a breakout, very clean breakout. All right. And before we even got the breakout, very clean breakout. Before we even got the breakout, you have bullish divergences right here. Look, you get the 1, 2, 3. You go RSI, MACD. I want you guys to take a look at this. While this was happening, this was giving us bullish divergence. Look at this right here, guys. Bullish divergence. All right. Not only that, you get a breakout, consolidate, boom. All right. This breakout right here took out the previous lower high. And then instead of a pullback, we just went sideways. And then look at this move right here, guys. Once we broke above $2,200, like once we took out this high right here, there was never again an argument that Ethereum was still bearish. This candle right here changed everything. So if we look at the current state of Ethereum, do we have, all right, do we have anything kind of similar to this? Do we have a breakout? Do we have structures? What do we have? If you put a trend line right here, all right, have we broken out? Absolutely not. Have we built some structures that are bullish where you got higher lows and lower lows? Nope. There's nothing. So because of that, why should we be bullish on Ethereum? All right, we have lower highs. Lower highs, chat. All right, you have a lower high right here. You have a lower high right here. We have lower. What are these? We have higher lows. This is a higher low right here, but structure is just not great. The structure is just not bullish. Remember the other day, we looked at this market. Excuse me, guys. Remember the other day, we looked at this market and we said, hey, guys, this consolidation is not bullish. And I told you guys, I was looking, Gareth Soloway, who's another, he does a bunch of, market updates. And he was looking at Ethereum potentially going up to $2,400, $2,600. And what I said to you guys was that, hey, I don't think so. He's looking at this as a bullish consolidation. I'm looking at it as a bearish consolidation. But we are still waiting. All right, we are still waiting. And I think any of you guys who's actually trading this market, like, I believe you're playing with fire. You're going to get stopped out, guys. Like, if you are going to get stopped out. Like, the volatility it's not even worth it. The trend is not in your. Yo, this market is untradeable. Chad, this market is untradeable. If you're trying to long this market, to the downside, wait until we get a breakdown. Like if I'm looking at Ethereum, if we lose $1,800, I think we're going straight down to around $1,300. I think that's where you get a trade. Right here in this freaking range, my my recommendation is stay away from trying to trade this market in this range right here. Wait for a breakdown. If we lose $1,800, short it all the way to 1,300. I will actually short it to $1,300 if I'm being honest with you. Anyways, excuse me, guys. So yeah, look, this is not a market that I will be trading right now. Hopefully, none of you is. Stay away from this untradeable market. 1 hour gives you short entries. I can give you guys some entries. We can talk about some entries. Let me give you some entries. I'll give you guys some entries. Just give me a second, chat. Damn, I am getting so bad. I'll give you guys some entries. All right, let me give you some entries. So, if I was looking at this, look, personally, I wouldn't trade it, but if I was looking at Ethereum, and first of all, if I want to trade this market, I think you might want to go down to like maybe like the 15 minutes. You know what I mean, guys? You want to come right here. I think here you can do something. All right, chat. I gotta have to cut this. I'll do another live stream later since we didn't get time. But yeah, appreciate you guys. I'll live stream again later, guys. All right, peace.